All right, welcome back. Rise, Grind, Repeat, Season 2, Episode 1 with Tim Murphy. Tim, how's it going? It's been a long summer without you, buddy.
Oh, it's been great. It's been great. Glad to be back. I'm glad that it's fall. Summers are always interesting, especially those of us who have families and school's out and things change. You've had a big transition this year too, this summer. How are things going?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I transitioned my family down from Connecticut to Florida. So yeah, that's been quite the journey over these last 3 or 4 months. And yeah, I just did the video on love and gratitude, and yeah, I kind of had a setback as far as you know um, the flow that I was in prior to. We ran into some issues with the house down here. The builders, there were some issues with the roof and some other things, and I let that kind of get the best of me, and still trying to sell the house in Connecticut. But the hardest thing was to maintain that routine that I was doing, because again, just moving in general, there was just a lot of just moving furniture, getting the kids set up, making sure they're okay. New bills that you have to deal with and figure out the system of how those come in, and of course still paying some of the bills back in Connecticut until that the transition till we sell the house there. So obviously a lot of stress involved, and the kids trying to get acclimated to missing their friends, and all this still while maintaining a job too. So just a lot of things at once. So that's been kind of it's been a challenge for sure, but we're starting to fall into a good place now, getting the routines back, and getting the kids in school and figuring out their routines. It's just funny how we're creatures of habit, which is a lot about our journey here.
Yeah, and that reminds me of is it Joe Dispenza who talks about like your body triggers your mind to do these behaviors and actions, and that if you're in a positive state and a positive ritual, your body will help trigger you into thinking positive thoughts and doing things that are good for you. Whereas when you shake that up, and it happens, I think, for a lot of people around summertime, with or without a giant transition of moving a location, that the ritual of the days and the weeks are changed. So it suddenly becomes, do we fall back on old habits and old patterns of behavior that are more reactionary, and start blaming others for what's going on inside of us? So yeah, I can empathize that it's a big shift, and it happened in a time where there's lots of transition, and now it sounds like it's fall, the kids are in a pattern of school, and a lot of things are settling down. It is.
Yeah. It's even going through the process. I think when again being back in Connecticut, there was that routine where the kids were at school. I had a system for, after work, working on, the rise, grind, repeat stuff. You just had set routines of when, you were going to allocate time for certain things. And then it's like the summer comes, which the summer back in Connecticut is obviously different than the summer here, and transitioning. And so the difference, this time again was, as far as the stress level was, I was aware of it. I knew, that like I'm letting these things bother me, and I knew with everything like we've gone through and have been learning that, your thoughts create your reality, and the more I would dwell on like, why this contractor is, not calling me back, and he's telling me this isn't covered and this is under warranty, and you just let that keep playing in your head, and instead of just letting it go, and waiting and being patient, and again, all this stuff is easier said than done.
Right.
But when I was in that perfect state of flow, it's like, yeah, if this was, You'd be like, no big deal. Everything will turn out the way it's supposed to. But it's like I think I just kept stacking one negative thing after the other, which and again, I got out of my routine of getting up early, and I was getting up later and later, and like so it was like every habit that I talk about like started to crumble, and I'm like, I got to get this back, and for me, I think. I'm looking now at the positive. It's like, oh, good. This is a way for me to redo, start over, and prove that I can do it all over again. So I'm in the infancy stages of that again. I'm now I can get up early. I'm doing my run. All the gratitude and the positive affirmations. So I can see that the positive effect it's having, and again, everything else is lining up well. The things with the house are going well, and kids are in school, and new habits are setting in, and routines. So that's it's like it's all about I want to say the awareness and the intention. It's like you have to be intentional, and it's hard. It's hard when you're in a negative state to then to change out of that and just be intentional, and you have to do it over and over and be mindful of it and catch yourself, and it's okay when it comes in. You just gotta kind of let it be what it is and let it go, and then go back to the positive aspect of whatever you're trying to deal with.
And the system seems to work. You use the word system, and that sounds, you approach it systematically. You know the elements that you need to do. It is harder to do than it is to say, but it does, like attracts like. The more positive you are, the more those things, you start seeing things differently, and then better things come your way.
Yeah, and again, I have to take a step back too, because when I started on this journey at the beginning of 2016, or is it 17? 18 actually, at the beginning of 2018, and started writing things down, and all the things that I wanted to do, and I would visualize and meditate, they're coming to fruition. So that that's the spin I had to put on it too. Is the vision I had, the future vision I had for my family, was that we would be in a warm climate, and for whatever reason, the vision had me in California, for whatever reason, near the ocean or whatever. But as it turns out, we're in Florida by the ocean. So I have to be grateful that these things are that I've envisioned or whatever are coming to fruition, and a lot sooner than I expected, and a lot of it had to do with I think I talked to you about the reason we moved down here, my wife's health, and she's been dealing with that for a couple of years now, and that's another thing that was so fascinating about us coming down here. Was within a month we did obviously with Craig, who I've had on the podcast. We've been doing acupuncture for well over 3 or 4 years with him, and it was important for us to find a good acupuncturist down here too, and we did that within the first couple of weeks. And what's interesting is the woman who was doing it, Sandy had talked to her about the symptoms she had and stuff like that, and she had recommended going to see this other specialist because it sounded pretty familiar with what she had. And come to find out, this woman was able to diagnose her condition that over the last 2 years no other doctor has been able to do. I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast. Maybe my wife will come on to a future podcast if she wants to talk about it. But again, it's the fact that we came to this specific location, and it wasn't because of that. It was just we just happened to come across this person. It's like it's all these things are just it's like it's meant to be, almost like it was manifested on all these things that we've been striving for, and writing down, and goals that we've had, so.
That's great, and it sounds like you had visions of living near the ocean in a nice climate, and this is how it manifested in a way that also benefited your wife's health and yeah, your health as well. And that it's interesting when you don't get wrapped up in the cursed hows or the specifics of I have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then I'll get to where I need to get to. And you've been writing down the vision and then working towards it systematically without getting stuck on having to take specific steps. The universe makes it almost a lot easier than you could have planned it and answers multiple questions at the same time. It's awesome.
Right. And we've come across this. It's about, letting go. It's like if, you put it out there, force um, don't force the issue or write down exactly these are the steps that I need to take to get to that, because if anywhere along the way, if you miss a step or a step doesn't come to pass, you might quit or give up or think that that's not the case. But if you just say, hey, I want to, it's best for our family to live in a warm environment because of this, and then just let everything else unfold the way, God and the universe want it. Because a lot of times it could be something better.
Yeah.
We pigeonhole ourselves into like, I want this specific thing, and it's like, well, the universe a lot of times has better plans. It's like, well, A, you have to be ready for it, and B, oh, well, if you shut the door for this, I can't give you this, and this might be a lot better.
Right. Yeah, if you guys were
So
stuck on California, none of this would have happened. You'd been waiting for, oh, it's got to be in California, and it wasn't location
right.
as much as environment. So
Right, and the funny thing too is with her autoimmune issue, it's which is what brought us down here to move in the first place. But again, it's like it could have been any other warm climate location, and of all places, it put us here,
yeah,
and then boom. By the way, let me introduce you to this doctor who can diagnose you with what you have. So it's I look, now I'm just applying. I'm looking back at the even earlier in my life and how all these things. It's really what you think about is your reality, and your thoughts are energy, energy. So it's a thing, and it's a frequency. Radio has frequencies. When you
yeah,
tune
yeah,
to certain channels, that's when you pick up the certain stations. And science has, just proved that, our thoughts are energy. So it is very important, what we do think about, and even what we say, what comes out of our mouth. I forget who I was listening to this week, but they were talking about like radio, like when you listen to a song, or all like let's take pop songs or whatever. It's like when you're listening to a song on the radio, there's hundreds of thousands of people also picking up on that same vibration and listening to that song, and their thoughts are being sent out there, and you end up being and resonating on that same level as all these other people, and that vibration's out there. So it's just that much more important to what you listen to, and what you whether it's music, or whether it's the news, or whether it's
yeah.
movies. It's like all that stuff has an impact, and we just we just don't. I think a lot of people just don't realize that.
Yeah, and you talked about science supporting this. There's the studies about water crystals when they're frozen, and if you play classical music, they form these beautiful symmetrical things. When you play some really hard rock, it might kind of be really not very uniform crystals. If you speak loving, positive words to it, beautiful crystals form. When you speak hateful things to it, again, not very organized crystals. And it's the when we're operating on the Newtonian mechanics level, which is human scale, things we measure. But when we start getting smaller and smaller into the atoms, atoms suddenly become, they're not just particles, they're waves as well as particles. So that's the kind of thing where when you start unpacking everything, we're all energy. we are all frequencies. And just like music, if you're listening to, you like a certain kind of music or a certain song, you resonate to that frequency. The same is true with people, that if you resonate on a certain frequency, if you're low on, you shared the, was it David Hawkins scale on your last video? If you resonate low, you're going to attract people, just like you had talked about in Connecticut, where people were, if they're complaining, they'll come over to you and complain. If you resonate in that level, when you start feeling above it, like your contractors, you start going beyond that and start thinking of a loving kind of vibration. Positive things and positive people start attracting to you, just like the songs on the radio.
Yeah, and it's amazing. It's like if this what I enjoy about the journey I'm on now is, if it wasn't happening to me, I would, and it was just theory or it's like I'm glad I'm coming across all these videos and this information after the fact, because it's one thing, I think a lot of people that might be stuck and reading, self-help or motivational things, and they're getting these tips and tools. They might be like, well, yeah, that's, in theory, okay, and they'll do it for a little bit and go, ah. But it's like, for those who know me, and they had, talked to me, even 3 years ago, and see the change, I think, in my outlook and my perspective now, can see the difference. But even if you can't, I know personally that all these tools and tips and things that I've learned, I went through I changed. I had this kind of, awakening and shift in my, in my body, in my vibration, firsthand. And I remember, I went to you and I was like, Tim, I can't figure this out. Like here I went from this always stressed because of all these things going on to, I'm walking to work and I'm like, I can't, I'm not stressed. I can't. Right. And so I backwards engineered, okay, well, why? What's the science behind why? Because I want to stay here. I want to stay in flow. I want to always be positive. I want to attract more positive people in my life and more positive things. And so I'm glad that it's almost like I'm glad I kind of hit rock bottom with my anxiety and depression, because it allowed me to see that, what I was doing to break out of that are actual, techniques that have been used, and I was doing them without even knowing that they were having this positive effect. So now that, that's kind of my goal with the podcasts and the videos, is to say, if you do these techniques, they work, there's science behind it. And, in like the last video, it's like, if that's the only thing you do, which is to show love and gratitude, and even like, I'll give you an example. It's like, I went through the drive-through at McDonald's yesterday and picked up a coffee, and this guy that was in the window had a sleeve, it was all tattooed, and it was cool looking. So while we were waiting and exchanging the money and stuff, I said, oh, I like that ink, it looks real cool. And he's like, oh, thank you. But you could, and I could tell like that changed his state, because I'm sure he doesn't want to be there work in the window or whatever. But it also, it was like this reciprocated exchange of, positive emotion. It's like he probably wasn't expecting that. That made his day, but it made me feel good to hopefully just say, something nice about him as well. And it's like, it's those little things that add up. If life was a game, and whoever collects the most, I try to tell my kids, if life was a video game, Fortnite or whatever, it's like, it's the person who collects the most smiles that wins. So it's like, if you could just like pay gratitude and be in that loving state, it should keep you, in a good place. And I think that's where everybody kind of wants to be anyway,
Yeah.
So why not be nice to everybody?
And that investment pays off. That's not why you do it, but it turns into, I think, positive vibration multiplies a lot faster and bigger than negative vibration. Uh, Positive is kind of additive, negative is subtractive. So
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, yeah, we're not, it's not. I'm not doing it for self, for just, for myself. Obviously, it's like I'm part of this whole transformation. It's like, hey, this, I know there's other people that were in my situation and probably even a lot worse,
yeah,
depending on what's going on in their life. So it's, when I went through this, and I think I had mentioned, I heard this voice that said, you're going to be okay. When I was going through this, and it's the vision that I had was, whether it was God or the universe, telling me to share my gifts. Hey, it's almost like I'm healing you. I'm helping you heal you. You gave everything up to ask for help, and here I'm going to help you. But this is what you need to do. You need to use your gifts, to go help others. And being that my background is in like web design and video production and stuff like that, it's like it hit me. I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is kind of my way to give back to those that are struggling or need help.
yeah, yeah. And it's was it Zig Ziglar that you can get anything you want in the world as long as you help as many people as you can get what they need. So the more you
Yeah.
give, the more you get. But then you realize you're doing it to give, not to get. So.
Yeah. So how's everything going in your world now that we're virtual now instead of face to
Yeah,
face? How
yeah.
are things back in Connecticut treating you?
Good, good, and coming back after the summer as well. There's some traveling that happened, which also I love traveling, but it kind of does break up the system that I have as well. So we spent some time in Chicago with my wife, and then the family and I went to the UK for a bit, and I just got back from Germany last week. So it's been very it's been a lots of changes, not as drastic as yours, but summertime is always kind of a pivot. I'm familiar enough with my patterns. I get less artwork done during the summer, which is fine, and I get a lot more done fall and winter. And that's why I thought you were in your studio. I'd share my studio today, and a lot of my work is about the journey that I'm on, and it's a similar journey to yours about being more in touch with yourself, and yourself being when we meditate, we're, we're we're listening to the voice in our head that is ourselves talking, but we're not that. We're the person behind the body, the person behind the dialogue in your head, and that's the kind of was it Dispenza that says the nowhere nobody kind of reference, and you had a nice post about the camera not taking your shadows photo because it didn't
Yeah.
recognize it. But that's the kind of those are the moments that I try to capture in my work, and in the journey, that's kind of what I've been working on too. And it seems like we've been listening to same YouTube channels and kind of pinging back and forth about the different books as well. And one I'd like to share is I went from Craig Beck's The Art of Happiness, where he referenced, let me hope I say it the right way, Ho'oponopono from, it's a Hawaiian practice that Joe Vitale had taken and helped popularize, and it's a four-stage process that you take ownership of everything that is in your life, and that's part of the journey that we're responsible for navigating our life. If we think positively, we go either level up and get more positive experiences. With Ho'oponopono, it's anything that's bothering you. Say you have someone at work that might be challenging, you take ownership that they're in your life because you had them come into your life for a reason. So that the four steps would be: you take ownership for it, and you talk to the great divine, the universe, God, whatever your belief system entails, and take ownership for it and apologize. I'm sorry. And then you ask for forgiveness. Forgive me because you brought this in, and then you thank the universe for this experience. Thank you. That's great because you're learning from that. And then you say to the universe, not to the person that's bothering you, but to the universe, to God, I love you. And you do that several times, and I personally could feel my like perspective change, my vibration change, and if there was water freezing around me, it would probably make beautiful crystals. And it's a really nice four-step process that kind of helps center me into the nowhere, nobody kind of, hey, I'm in a good vibration. So that's been interesting. And Joe Vitale's book, At Zero, is the one that I read and have kind of that's the most recent book on the shelves. So, but it's been a pretty good summer.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds. And can you talk like, 'cause I mean your artwork is amazing, and can you talk about specifically that one behind you where the people are
Yep,
down?
this
Yeah, right.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's a good representation. It's in process. It's not completed, but you see the crowd of people. These are the people that are still in the lower vibration, or thinking about earthly matters and concerned about, oh, what's that person wearing? Oh, don't cut in front of me. So very, very almost uh, petty, almost physical world kind of aspects. Whereas the person floating is when you get to that point. It's when you've said your ho'oponopono enough times, or you've realized you should vibrate in love. It's kind of that elevation. So symbolically, that person is elevating above the physical troubles of the world in the past, and that's kind of I have a lot of flying figures in my work, and that's what it's referencing. Just getting to that state where you're above the worldly kind of problems, because it is your world. You've created it. It's all there for you. So it's kind of like when
Yeah.
you really meditate nicely, that's the zone that you're in.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, at the height, I want to say, like, of my flow. It's like that's where I felt like I was, elevated to, where it's like, I didn't let the worldly things, the, consumerism and all that stuff, get to me or whatever, and I was more present and, just aware, where, I don't want to say like just consciousness, but it was almost
Yeah.
like that, where, um, where time is like the ultimate. Time is more important than than money. We have a finite time on the planet, and it's like, what I don't want to waste any of it. So, um, but yeah, so like, I can definitely like resonate with that with that artwork, and I think that's where, I think everybody wants to be, and not, and it's almost like down there is like where the noise is,
Right. Yeah.
where the news and everybody, where, um, the government wants us to be kind of controlled, and, hey, this is what you should be buying, this is what you should be thinking. Let me, feed you more of this, things that aren't gonna help you grow. And I think, that's our purpose here, is to grow. And at least that's what I'm learning, now is, I think, again, what we're taught is, once you get out of school, it's like you find a job, you hunker down, and that's your until you retire, and you're not supposed to grow. And I don't know that that's necessarily true, or is what's being taught, or but I think that's just I'm sure that's 80% of the population. It's
Yeah.
and I think what even led us down here, and with what my wife was going through too, is after my dad passed away. I mean, you know, he he had his own business early on, and then he ended up, having to go through the corporate world, and until he retired, and then he ended up getting sick and getting cancer as soon as my mom retired, and they were able to come down, to Florida for retirement. So he didn't even get to enjoy that. And I think, life is short, and that's the one thing, for me. And I talked to my wife, and I says, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait to retirement to, enjoy life. I want to, make sure we're doing, life, the way we want to, and not, And if that means, having a 9 to 5 job, then that's what we have. But I think that it's important to, just because society, tells you that this is the norm, doesn't mean that you have to follow it. It's like you can find your own way, and yeah.
That's true. Yeah, and if you're always chasing, there will always be someone that has a little bit more than you, or has a nicer car, or if you measure yourself by your job title, there'll always be someone that has a higher title than you, and it doesn't mean you can't navigate and take pride in work and having a job, but if there's more to life in the world than your status in the hierarchy of what you think is important, and that's the people down here are really in that's how they evaluate each other, and then the people that are flying right there, yeah, are the people that they can be in any walk of life, and you can, it's like your vibration, you'll see them and you'll get them. And I know we've talked about this in the past, where you make eye contact and you kind of size someone up and you're kind of like, oh, this person is actually vibrating on a little bit different level. They kind of are seeing more than other people are seeing, which is, and I think that's the journey that I've been enjoying, is kind of the more I get in touch with what's inside beyond me, the more I can kind of look past things, but I start seeing things that I didn't see before, which is other people that are on similar journeys.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to see, I don't want to compare it to like They Live. Like, it was like kind of a I don't want to say like it's a campy horror movie back in like the 80s with Roddy Piper, but it's almost like you can feel somebody else's energy and know that they're on the same trajectory and wavelength as you. It's almost like when you go into a room and you can either feel,
yeah,
like, there's something off here, I shouldn't be here. This is,
right.
And you just know that there's conversations you probably don't want to get into in that room, because it's just, you can tell it's just a negative environment, where you can also go into, a different one. Like, I was at my, this summer, before we moved down here, my cousin got married, and I remember going, especially when we went to the reception, it was like, we walked in and there's just this great energy, like you could feel it. And again, that's that frequency, and
Yeah.
the David Hawkins reference. And I think in the past I would have just mistaken that for, oh yeah, of course it's, we're at a wedding, it's happy, but there is a frequency, and there is a difference when when you walk into certain areas or spaces. And I think even in our own houses, it could be the same way, And I think maybe that's why a lot of times people, have their house blessed, and
Right. Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
there could be some negative vibes, as they say,
Yeah.
going on.
That's true. Yeah. And there's I can't recall what I was listening to, but it had to do with if you bless or have magical like armor, you can have faith in something, and by that faith, that makes that armor protect you. But you also tie up the camel, because you have to be, you have to be take all precautions, but you will also have protection. It's not either or. It's not walking in thinking that you're bulletproof. It's that if you have faith in something that's protecting you, that will help you vibrate at a different level and make different choices. But you also need to have common sense too. There's a balance there. I'm not doing justice to the story, but it is feeling a vibration, believing in something that can help you, and using common sense at the same time. So if you feel a room is not too good, your common sense is like, I'm sizing it up. Why is that? Let me get out of here. So it's a balance of that.
It's that intuition.
Yeah.
It goes back to always, like, trusting your intuition. It's funny because I think I was telling you before, I went to a speaking engagement this past weekend, and I won't give the speaker's name out, but
Okay.
at first I was like, yeah, this is within the first 5 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I don't think this is pretty solid, speaker, like at least the presentation piece of it. And then I did get a lot of great nuggets, but right as we broke for lunch, sure enough, the salesy pitch of you know, it's kind of like a little bit greasy, you know,
Yeah.
sales pitch and whatever. But you know, but my intuition was correct. You know, my first intuition when I got into the room, I'm like, okay, this isn't as buttoned up as I thought this presentation, the speaker was going to be.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was free. But again, it's like it goes back to always like kind of trusting your gut and your intuition, you know, because it knows, you know.
Yes, yeah, it's the conscious and subconscious mind too. The subconscious mind identifies patterns really quick and lets you know. It says, "Hey, let's keep." In the more your subconscious is alert, or the higher your vibration level, the more your subconscious opens up and gives you those insights. And that's it's like. You can logically think your way out of something, but you're always trying to, when you're doing that, if you're going against your intuition, your gut, you know you're trying to negotiate with yourself, whereas the more higher your vibration is, when you get those intuitions, you go, that's something, I don't know why, but something just told me that this is not a good place to be, so I'm going to leave. And you trust it more. And because of that, better things happen and less not so good things happen as well.
Is it that's so true. That's so amazing because like I think if I was again resonating at that higher level I was at last year, I probably would have just walked out. I would have knew, you know, and I did know, you know, but it was
Yeah.
like, let me, you know, maybe I'm wrong, you know, maybe my
Right.
gut's wrong, and let me, you know, hunker down. And again, it's like I did get a few nuggets out of it, but ultimately, like, you know, again, the intuition was right, and it was like the, you know, my subconscious knew right away, and
Right.
normally I would have steered clear of that, you know, situation. So, yeah,
But you
cool.
got some nuggets out of it too. So sometimes it's kind of like, oh, there's something here, but you didn't stick around either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For the ultimate sales pitch
Yeah.
at the end, you know. Um, and I think I told you too. The good thing was like at the break, it's like I think, you know, God and the universe put this person next to me because they were, you know, thinking the same thing. They're like, are you sticking around for the second half? I'm like, geez, I was thinking, you know, the same thing you are. I think I'm gonna bail and beat traffic and, you know, get home. So,
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Confirmation for you each other, just like boom. Okay.
boom. Yeah, we both helped each other make, you know, make the hopefully the right decision, you know. But
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Well, you know, I think you know it's great to be back on you know on the podcast and get things going for season 2, and you know definitely looking to have some good guests on for us, and you know but again it's been, you know, a few months. It was good to kind of take the summer off and regroup, and I mean I guess regroup. We had a big transition,
Yeah.
but it's great catching up with you, Tim, and I think you know we'll definitely have some great guests on soon, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Same here. Cool.
All right, Tim. Take care. Godspeed.
Godspeed.